Today we're going to look at 5 beginner mistakes for painting German armor models. A lot of this is detail painting related, and it's stuff I wish I could have found easily when I started myself. Now the first one involves this thing, which is the wire cutters, or Drahtschere in German, and it gets painted incorrectly all the time. Now I have an original one, I have a whole video about it if you want to check it out, but I will show you what the common version that you see is and what it should look like. So this is a Tiger 131 I did from a Tamiya kit years ago, and if you look at where the handles are, I did those in brown as well, which is incorrect, but that's not really the point. The point is that I stopped them at those 2 bumps, which is not correct. They should look like that, where the reddish color goes up past the bumps to a little notch before the metal end starts, and the bottom should be dark brown. This is not even just like amateurs or new people. So many people get this wrong. It is like the most common mistake in armor modeling that I can think of. Number 4 is red fire extinguishers. The thing that makes the builds look the most amateur and bad is red fire extinguishers. They were not red on the exterior of Panzers, and you should never do that. What you should do is look for period reference in color if you can. This one is picked out in a slightly lighter gray with the hull color clamp so it pops, but it is actually, reasonably correct. Leaving it the hull color is fine. You can make it yellow on a gray vehicle later in the war, I suppose, but in general, you either want to leave it hull color or pop it out in a lighter version of whatever you're doing. Or like in this case, I found reference of an original that was roughly that color, so on any early war vehicles, I just put them that color because it doesn't look too ridiculous, but it works. Number 3, we're back over on my tool wall, because another huge thing that I see that makes things look really amateur and newbie is silver metal color on tools. So this is a relic, so it's not a great example of what color things should be, but you can definitely paint things this sort of rusty brown color on models and it looks more correct. This is an old tool that's got this dark black finish on it that's much more common than a silver ever would be. So if you can see this, the wood is dark, but this is like a black, and then here's the actual metal color underneath. This is what relic steel looks like, but it's kind of the same color as Trax. That's a much smarter thing to paint the metal parts on tools. My starter crank here is a relic piece, so that's irrelevant. It's just rusty colored. Like that's what something looks like coming out of the ground. But like this over here is much more correct, like a dark brown. But really, a flat grayish black or a dark brown. These are the ways that you should be painting metal parts on tools. I actually kind of disagree of painting them with the gray kind of night shift method. Like this is an original small axe from a Panzer, and it's kind of that way, but still it looks a little much in my opinion. If you want to do it, that's fine too, I guess. But that's like some advanced stuff. But here's your 2 options for shovel heads. So I myself usually just go with something dark as a base, but I'm also not trying to peacock it up and make everything look like it's been sitting in a field like this thing did for 80 years. So, and then this is my really old Tiger 131 build. You can see I even kept the tool's faces painted hull color, which is how the Bovington Tiger is. But I would suggest that over silver. And then these were just picked out in sort of a rubber black or black gray, like, some kind of darker than this gray. And at least it pops out and it's more correct. You chip it with something shiny if you like to, but I would keep it dull and simple. Number 2 is scale camo. Now I've talked about this a lot on my channel over the years, and I've gotten other people like Panzermeister 36 to also say the same things, and it's kind of caught on a little bit. But the idea is, I've been saying this for a long, long time, this is how big someone painting camouflage would have been. So what you're trying to do is minimize the amount of very large, smooth shapes, right? So like how much how much can this guy's arm move at one time? So like a really newbie thing to see on armor models is like these big, like a sweep that goes over like the whole hull. And that's just not possible. So it stands out as really ridiculous because no one could do it. So like when I painted this, and this video is on my channel, I'm making really small movements, trying to make sure that nothing is unrealistically large, because again, a guy like this is painting it, and keeping your camouflage within the realm of what would be physically possible for a person will just make it look less amateur and better. And number one would be just people not knowing what things are. So for instance, like an example would be that part of the fire extinguisher that I was showing on the Panzer IV, which probably isn't going to pick up here. Which parts of this are the fire extinguisher, which parts are the clamp, and so on. Not realizing what you're painting means that it's often painted wrong, so newer people won't like their results, or other people will say, hey, this is not right. If you don't know what you're doing, which I'm not suggesting that everyone gets a wall of original tools. That's ridiculous, and I have more over there, and I've got all this stuff. You don't have to do this, but just look at somebody's stuff like Mike Rinaldi or something like that, or someone who's less artistically talented and more rivet countery. We exist. And just figure out what something is. Like most people didn't know what a C-hook was. When I started getting into this and I was online talking to people, I ended up buying one, making a video on it, because people don't really know exactly what all the stuff is. I mean, obviously some people do, but there are lots of people who don't know, what part of a thing on a model, especially new people, what part of this is a tool, what part is a clamp, what does this do, what would it have been made out of. So, the number one thing that makes people's builds look amateur is just that they don't understand what this thing is. So they will inevitably paint it the wrong color or try to like give it some color for pop, but that's a silly thing to do. So just do your research is the number one thing, really. It's like, don't paint a thing that you don't understand. And it's not that hard. I have a research group on Facebook. There are tons of people around you to say, hey, what color is this? I remember personally I was asking people about tow cable ends, because the Panther that's now out in Massachusetts, the one that was in California, the restored one, has oxide red eyelet bits. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's how they always were. And that's because I was new and stupid. And you come in not knowing stuff, so you start taking in all the information and you don't really know what's what. So just ask around and try to do the best of your abilities, either understand what you're doing or copy something that looks right, that you like the look of, that you're okay with.